What if I told you that the most radical thing a woman ever did with a paintbrush was simply refuse to look away? Not from the acrobat in the wings, still trembling from the fall no one saw. Not from the dancer whose feet bled inside satin shoes. Not from her own reflection, standing beside a nude, holding the gaze that had always belonged to someone else. This is the story of Dame Laura Knight and the bodies she refused to let disappear. In the circus, no one is born. They arrive instead from somewhere ordinary, from a town with a name no one remembers, from a kitchen or a field or a factory floor, and then they begin the long work of assembling themselves into something the world will stop to watch. Laura Knight painted them in the middle of that assembling. Not the performance, but the before. The chalk-white hands pressed against the trapeze bar with the grip of someone who has learned that letting go is an art and holding on is another. The acrobat whose body is perfectly still but whose stillness carries the memory of every fall that taught it how not to fall again. She understood this world because she had done her own version of it. She had assembled herself out of poverty, out of a childhood with no safety net, out of a world that looked at a girl who wanted to paint and saw only impossibility. She knew what it cost to become. She knew it lived in the body first, in the hand that learns to hold without trembling, in the spine that learns to stay upright when everything around it says bend. And the circus people let her in. Season after season, she sat among them with her sketchbook and they forgot she was watching. And that forgetting was the gift, that ease, that animal trust. She painted what trust looks like in a body that has learned to fly. Muscle and powder and the specific weight of a costume worn so many times it has begun to carry the shape of the person inside it. And beneath all of it, the quiet miracle of a body rehearsing belief until belief becomes indistinguishable from flesh. Beauty here is not natural. It is manufactured in the cold of early mornings, in rooms that smell of rosin and sweat, and the particular exhaustion of a body pushed past what the body thought was possible. It is built in repetition, the same movement, corrected again, corrected until correction becomes instinct, and instinct becomes something that looks, from the front of the house, like grace. Knight painted the backstage, always the backstage, the dancers in the wings, half in costume and half not, the tool catching the low stage light and turning it into something almost sacred. The girl bent at the bar with her face turned away from the mirror, not because she cannot bear to look, but because she has looked so many times that the looking has become irrelevant. She knows the body by feel now, by ache, by the particular burn in the hip that tells her she has found the right line. There is a tenderness in these paintings that sits alongside something harder. Knight did not romanticize the ballet. She saw the labor inside the illusion, and she painted both at once. The shimmer of the costume and the reddened feet inside the satin shoe. The transcendence and the price of it, held in the same frame without apology. The body learns how to be watched. That is what the ballet teaches above everything else. How to stand inside another person's gaze and not disappear. How to be seen completely and remain, somehow, intact. Knight knew something about that too. And then she did something that made people uncomfortable in a way they could not quite articulate. She painted herself, painting a nude. The model stands with her back to us, unclothed, her body warm against the cool studio light. And beside her, fully dressed, brushes in hand, eyes on the canvas, Knight herself, looking, working, completely absorbed in the act of seeing. It should not have been scandalous, but it was. And the reason it was tells you everything about what the gaze had always meant and who it had always belonged to.
A woman's body in paint was supposed to exist for the viewer, passive, arranged, offering itself to whatever eye arrived. Night broke that arrangement simply by standing in the frame herself, by making the looking visible, by refusing to disappear behind the canvas and let the nude exist in the old silence. And then history arrived, not as a subject she chose, as something that came to the door and would not be turned away. The Second World War pulled Night into territory her circus people and her dancers had never prepared her for. She painted the women of the Air Transport Auxiliary, ferry pilots, mostly unknown, who flew military aircraft across Britain in all weathers without radio or instruments, navigating by the shape of the land below them. She painted them in their flight gear, their faces carrying the particular calm of people who have accepted a specific kind of risk and folded it quietly into the texture of daily life.
There is no performance in these paintings. No sequins, no chalk, no satin shoe. The women stand in their heavy jackets with the sky behind them, and the light is not theatrical. It is just light, the ordinary English light of a cold morning, and the faces it falls on are simply faces. Tired, resolved, present. And then Nuremberg. Night was sent as an official war artist. She sat in that courtroom and looked, the way she had always looked, with the full, unhurried attention she had given to the trapeze artist and the dancer in the wings. And she painted what she saw. The men at the dock, the weight of consequence in a room where the air itself seemed altered. The strange, ordinary quality of evil when it is made to sit still and be witnessed. No costume, no rehearsal, only what a body carries when all the performance has finally been stripped away. She lived until she was 92, Dame Laura Night, who had begun with nothing and assembled herself piece by piece into one of the most singular artists Britain produced in the 20th century. She is not as remembered as she should be, perhaps because she did not fit. The circuses and the ballet girls and the Nuremberg courtroom and the female pilots, they do not make a neat story. They do not resolve into a single image you can hang on a wall and explain in a sentence. They are the record of a whole life of looking, sprawling and various, and stubbornly itself. But the paintings remain. They remain, and they look back. And in the looking, there is something that has not softened with time. A body assembled, a gaze held, a life pressed into paint and given back to the world as evidence that to look carefully at another human being, at the cost and the grace and the ordinary daily courage of being alive inside a body, is never a small thing. It is, perhaps, the only thing.